Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Whitley Strieber, and he's here to share with us his new book, The Afterlife-Revolution. Do you think love can endure even after death? The Afterlife-Revolution is written by Whitley and Anne Strieber and is among the most convincing stories of afterlife communication ever told. And it's a ringing endorsement not only for the fact that we do not die, but also that the power of love can create an actual bridge between the physical and non-physical worlds. So many of you know Whitley. He's the author of over 40 books, both in fiction and nonfiction. His books, The Wolfen, The Hunger, Communion, and The Coming Global Superstorm, which was the inspiration for the film The Day After Tomorrow. Several of his works have been made into feature films, and his sci-fi series, Alien Hunter, became the Sci-Fi Channel series Hunters. So let's welcome to the show, Whitley Strieber.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and in fact pretty excited to be here because I've listened to your show and I know what you do and we're really very much on the same page.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I just love your work. And when I heard about this book and kind of dived into it, I mean, it's both like soul-wrenching and really provides a lot of hope at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's the idea because there's so much. The Afterlife Revolution is really written by two people, by me and my wife, Anne, and her contribution occurred from after her death, after she passed away. And it's an amazing story because Anne she had a near-death experience in 2004. And prior to that, after our book Communion was published about a close encounter of the third kind I had way back in the 80s, we got tens of thousands of emails, hundreds of thousands actually. And Anne and her secretary, Lori Barnes, read and cataloged them all. That catalog of emails is now archived at Rice University as part of the Anne and Whitley Strieber archive. So it is by academics, it's considered one of the finest collections of modern folklore in the world. Of course, we don't think of it as folklore at all. But in any case, one day she came out of her office and she said, Whitley, and this is referring to the so-called alien abduction thing that the book Communion was about, this has something to do with what we call death, which sort of surprised me until I looked back in my own experiences and at what was going on at our cabin. And I realized that the dead and these so-called visitors often appear at the same time and in the same context and even together. And so we wondered what was going on. And we were pretty secular people even then, but we decided that we talked briefly. It wasn't a big thing. We just talked briefly, and I'm fairly sure we did, about if the first one of us to die can come back, this person, the one that dies, should come back not directly to the other one, because neither one of us, both of us assume it was our imagination, but to friends, and then have the friends tell us. Fast forward to August of 2015. Now Annie, she recovered from the stroke. She had that caused the near-death experience in 2004. But now she's dying of a brain tumor, which is perhaps a sequel of some kind to the stroke we've never known and never will. And her body is failing, and they've done all they can for her. And she says to me in July 28th, 2015, Whitley, I'm finished. I'm going to leave. And this was a person who, at this point in time, knew an enormous amount about the afterlife and dying. The previous January, without telling me why, she had insisted that I memorize a poem called The Song of Wandering Angus by W.B. Yeats. And I struggled with this because I'm not very good at memorization. And she wept, and it really impressed me with the need to do this. And so I memorized the poem, and it turned out to be absolutely central to our eventual afterlife communication. Now, she died on August the 11th, 2015, at 7:15 in the evening. At 9:30, I was sitting in my chair, and I had already heard her because just before she passed away, I was having dinner with my son and daughter-in-law who were with me because we knew Annie had intentionally stopped eating and drinking, and she was going to pass away, we knew, very soon, because the brain tumor was destroying her, and her concern was very real that it would do something like cause her to become unable to breathe or something like that. So she wanted to go before that happened. And as we were eating, I suddenly heard her voice in my head say, "Whitty, I'm dying right now." And I rushed into the bedroom and laid my hand on her heart and started saying, "Goodbye, goodbye." And her heart stopped under my hand. So at 9:30 that night, I was sitting in my chair in the living room. My kids had gone out for a walk, and I was in a state of something very deep. Our love between me and Anne, was extremely strong. We were almost like two people in one. We had joined in a very deep way, which turned out to be the case. So I was thinking, Annie, if you are still here in any way, please let me know. And the phone rang. And it was a friend, Belle Fuller, who said, "Whitley, I just heard Anne tell me to call you right in my ear, like her voice. Is she all right?" And I said, "Belle, she died this evening." Belle knew she was sick, of course. And that was the first of what turned out to be a whole series of similar experiences where friends would call and say, "I heard Anne tell me to call you." And after a while, I remembered that discussion. It wasn't really a pact. It's too strong to say that word. It was a discussion about doing this back in the 90s. And I thought, my God, Anne's doing it. And that's when the relationship started again, over again, because as soon as I understood that, it expanded dramatically. And then from the poem goes like this. The Song of Wandering Angus goes like this. "I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand, and hooked a berry to a thread. When white moths were on the wing, and the moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor and went to go blow the fire aflame, something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and faded through the brightening air. I am old with wandering in hollow lands and hilly lands, but I will find where she has gone and walk with her in long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun." And you hear that phrase about the White Moth. There was a story I wrote years ago. I'm a writer of fiction as well as nonfiction, called The White Moths, which was Anne's favorite of all of my stories. And it is about an old woman discovering that she's dead. And I realized the next thing that started to happen is I was at a conference, and I have a surveillance cameras in my apartment. And the surveillance camera texted me that there was movement. And I looked at the tape, and there was a big white moth flying back and forth in front of the camera. And I thought, what in the world is that doing in there? And this continued. I was at a conference, another conference, and I was talking about the white moth, and I had already by that time in my mind related it to Anne. And I said, but I'm not sure, of course, if it's connected, but it seems to me that it may be. And at that moment, while I was on the lectern, the text sounded, and I looked on the text, and there the white moth had appeared and was flying back and forth in front of the camera again. Then Christmas came of that year. I guess it was 2016. And I was telling my son about this, and I said, I think the white moth is a sign that Mom is here. The camera, I was at his house. I was not at home. I got a text immediately, and there was the white moth flying back and forth again in front of the camera. The most recent event with the white moth happened night before last at 12:42 a.m. Someone often comes to me, and they will come gently down onto my midriff, and I can feel a weight and a very loving presence. And I have wondered, I've assumed it was Anne in some form. And night before last, for the first time in over a year, I had the surveillance camera on in the bedroom. And usually I don't turn it on in the bedroom. But for some reason, I wanted to turn it on. And this happened at about 12:40, I guess. Wonderful. It was almost like she was there physically, and she was touching me. And it was so lovely, lovely experience. The next morning, I thought to myself, I wonder if there was anything visible, because I could feel the weight so strongly, and it really did seem like Anne. And there's only one thing visible. The white moth appears in the room at the same time and flies and then disappears literally in under a 25th of a second, because it disappears inside one of the frames of video. And we think of videos as being just a stream, but they're actually separate frames, like film is. And in other words, it disappeared inside a frame. It didn't disappear because it was in one frame and not in the next. It disappeared so quickly that it literally was inside. It was just amazing. And that's only one of hundreds of experiences with the white moth, some of which are even more spectacular. So the long story is now going to be ended. And you can ask me another question, and I'll end it this way. About 3 years ago now, I realized that Anne was living with me. And so I now wear both rings. I wear my ring on my ring finger and her ring on my little finger beside it, to symbolize the fact that we are two souls living now with just one body. We've got one body left in this world at the moment. So that's where it is.
Oh my goodness. I mean, your story gets me so emotional. I'm like trying not to fully cry here. So.
Oh, that's all right. I cry all the time with the story. I'm not afraid to cry.
Well, and I love just this deep, beautiful connection that you and Anne have. And I know in your book you talk about rainbow body. And I think for our listeners, they would love to hear what that means, and what are some of the signs that you've had about that?
Well, the rainbow body is a Tibetan Buddhist concept that where there are certain signs when a soul that is, to be, a very advanced soul is going to ascend. After the death of this individual, the physical death, there are signs. A mist will appear in the air, and among other things, and then there will be rainbows. And this is what happened when Annie passed. They came to get her body and took it down and put it in the hearse. It was night. And as the hearse slowly moved out of the back alley of our building, this mist appeared, and quite dense, actually. So dense that my son and I took pictures of it, and we've got the pictures and show the lights of the hearse departing amid this mist. And I knew about the rainbow body. I'd read a whole book about it called The Rainbow Body. And so I thought to myself, that's an interesting thing, because as soon as the hearse was gone, so was the mist. Then it came time to have wakes for Anne. Anne was not a believer in funerals. And in fact, she was quite unsentimental about everything and had donated her body to the medical school, which was one of the hardest things I ever did, because, I wanted something more of a remembrance, but she was not interested. She said that students can use this. And she was such a teacher that just in the core of her being, that I understood that that's what she wanted. And so I did it. And it was hard, but I did it. And so that was where her body was going, not to a funeral home. And then it came time for the wake. And this is about a week later, we're in Texas, our home, and going to have the wake at the old family home. There's a family home there in north of San Antonio. And Andrew and I, my son and I, are riding up to the house on the highway, and one rainbow after another appeared. And we took pictures of them. And I realized then Anne had ascended, and that was the sign of the rainbow body.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to share that. And I'm sure that there have been many profound aha moments that you've had with Anne during this time. My goodness. Would you be interested in sharing a couple with us?
Well, the one night before last, of course, I just shared the most recently, one of the most profound things that happened just a little while ago. I have a feeling Annie is aware of the fact in fact, I'm sure she is, that I'm doing a lot of radio about her now, and she is working hard to participate. And I am not a good channeler, I have to tell you, because I'm. It's not that I can't do it; I can do it, but I have a tendency to suspect that I'm intruding on the channel, and so it's hard. And Annie wants me to. She had a diary on our website, unknowncountry.com, that she kept for many, many years. And she has wanted, after she's passed, for me to continue the diary. And she will come to me every once in a while, and I hear her say, I have a diary. And I've managed many times, actually about 10 or 12 times now in the 5 years, to successfully hear that. And on December the 1st, a diary came. This was after we had I interviewed a seer called Shirley Black, who had one of the most intense experiences with Anne of all the people. Many, many people have had contact with Anne, and definitely gets around for sure. Anyway, this diary entry is called The Peace of the Heart. And these are Anne's words. This is a diary about inner peace. Everyone has inner peace, only we build a kind of shell around it. The shell is made up of fear and hate, but it's a very brittle shell and you can break through it. You break through it by remembering your heart. Remember what your heart was like when you were 10 years old, open and willing. Whitley talks about real will all the time when he works with people. But this kind of will, the will of a child, is more real than the will of persistence and determination that he talks about. This is what Jesus means when he says, be as little children, because it is innocent. An innocent will is like the will of God. So when you break through that shell that has been created in you by all the negativity that bombards us from every direction, you will find a place of peace within. It is just as fresh as it was when you were a little child. The whole journey of enlightenment starts with admitting that you are no longer a child, but that the path to a new childhood is open. This path is a path to what I call a mature childhood, that is to say, innocence that accepts experience. I've got more to say, but I can't say it in words. When you recover your innocence, you will know what I did not say and could not say. It will be part of you, for it belongs to every heart. It is very ancient and goes all the way back to a very basic discovery that caused all creation. It was the discovery that the universe wasn't there. The instant that was felt, that absence, everything began. The heart of the matter was there before anything began. You can find that in yourself. That original seed of love is still inside you. So step out of the maze of confusion that is daily life and find your heart at the beginning of the world.
I love that. That's so beautiful. My goodness.
I know it. I have to be honest with you. It's real. I can't write like that. I can't have those. I've never had ideas like that. But, the night she left, a book fell open. We found a book lying open on our bookshelf. It hadn't been opened in many years. It's called Physics from Fisher Information, and it was open to a page that was with a sentence that had been marked at some point in the book's life by yellow pen, possibly by Anne and possibly by someone else. I don't know. The book was not new when we bought it, or borrowed it, I should say. I'm embarrassed to say I borrowed it from someone 30 years ago. So he's still a friend, I'll say that also. In any case, it was open to a page that said, the universe began with a single primordial quest for knowledge. And this diary entry, the original seed of love, is still inside you. The instant that absence was felt, everything began, is similar. It's very similar in concept, a little bit more developed perhaps than the concept in the book. But we had a dear friend who, he wasn't. Let me rephrase that. He was an acquaintance. I don't want to be inaccurate here. Called Christian Barnard, who had developed the first heart replacement surgery. He was South African, and he told me a story. This is not in his papers or biography or anything, but that he had been in hospital with a myocardial infection of the myocardial sac, the area around the heart. And he began to have heart palpitations, and being a doctor, he knew exactly what was happening and began to press the button to call the nurses because he needed help. And no one came, And suddenly a woman came into the room, dressed in a long white gown, drifted across the room, placed her hands on his chest, then in his chest and around his heart, and then withdrew and flew out the window. And he thought, my God, am I dead? And in that moment, the entire structure of this surgery that went on to have saved tens of thousands of lives in this world came into his mind. Then the nurses came rushing in and said, we couldn't come in because the woman in the room next door to you has just expired. And it was that soul that left him that extraordinary piece of information.
Oh my goodness. That is just amazing how that is. And you can tell that these are real experiences that, other people have had that you are having with Anne.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
find them so profound, because if you ask people, have you had a loved one or a pet or, you name it, come and visit you, most people are going to say they have. Most people have had those type of experiences, but maybe they don't know how to express it.
Right. Well, they don't know how to find it in themselves, really, because we live in a world that is relentlessly telling us you have no soul. We live in a world that has gone soul blind. If all of the people who really are in command of our world are soul blind people, we are underlings to them. But you talk to any major scientist, you talk to any most major authors, most major reporters, people in the media, they're all in agreement. There is no such thing as the soul. In other words, they've gone blind. We're blind. We're being led by the blind, but we're not blind. I'm not blind. You're not blind. I don't think many of your listeners are blind. We can see. And here we are looking out at the physical world from a completely different perspective from those who are soul blind. And we're thinking, what in the world are they up to? What are they doing? They're actually walking toward a cliff and taking us with them, and they don't know it. Help. And our dead are coming back. They are helping. That's what these experiences, like the experience with Anne, are all about. And it's not an experience with Anne, it's a relationship. Anne will be here. I meditate with a group of people every day at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Anne will be here then. And she will, during the meditation, she will come and I will feel her presence physically on my body. Usually she's down low just above my feet. And I feel this sort of electric tingling and very slight weight there. And it's really lovely. And then at the end of the time, my eyes will be closed during the meditation. And at exactly 1:25, when the meditation ends, the sensation will increase. And that'll be Annie saying it's time to quit. And I'll open my eyes. It'll be 1:25, and we'll be concluding. It's like that every single day because she meditates with us every day.
So I'm sure a lot of listeners are going, I want to be a part of that.
Well, it's not, it's small, and I've been doing it for a long time, but you have to make a commitment. It's a life experience, and, people will dip into a thing for a couple of weeks and then they're gone. But you have to make a commitment to do it. I've been meditating like this for 50 years, every single day, and more than 50 years at this point. I meditate doing this particular exercise at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, often at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when there's sun, because doing it in the sun is really very powerful. Then I do it at 11 o'clock at night, and then I do it, and I'm waked up by whoever is working with me, Annie and others, at about 3 in the morning every morning to do it during what is in certain yogas known as Brahma-muhurta time, which is the time of learning and insight. And during that time, I am open, and a lot of creativity happens then, and a lot of self-knowledge, and the inner journey is very deep then. But this is my life. And in other words, it's like being a monk in a way. So if you want to make a commitment like that, send me an email at whitley@strieber.com. That's STRIEBER.com. But you have to be serious within yourself if you want to start at the 1:00 meditation. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. And you're always welcome.
What a profound journey that is. I have to thank you because you have such courage in sharing your story and such bravery in sharing it with us. And I just applaud you. I think there's so much that you're doing to help mankind move forward and to gain a greater understanding about who it is that we are and how we connect with the other side and how that's there for us. So just thank you, Whitley. I mean, my goodness, you're such a hero.
Oh, thank you. I don't feel like that. I feel like just a very lucky person. It's what I feel like. I feel like I have broken through in a way that, and my wonderful wife, who's such a teacher, such a good teacher. She was a teacher in this life and the most wonderful teacher. She was known in our part of Manhattan as the paint lady, because Anne was a free soul, and she taught in elementary school, and she had art in an elementary school, a Catholic elementary school nearby, near our house, and she had the children paint murals in all of the stairwells of the school, and to find themselves in the murals. And so she was always wandering around the neighborhood covered from head to foot with paint. And she was like that. I mean, she didn't bother her. She would just do it. You put Annie somewhere and she would do it. She would do all that she could with whatever she had.
Wow, it sounds like the both of you are just a pair made in heaven because you're both on this journey together that is just quite extraordinary. My goodness, Whitley, I mean, we could talk for hours. I know that I know that you have other things, of course. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
It's very simple. You go to unknowncountry.com and you can connect with me there. There's a subscription section and a free section, and they're both very, very extensive. The free section has a message board, and there's a lot of social activity on it. We do monitor it, so it's not full of trolls. It's a nice place to be, in other words. It's very neighborly and friendly. And the subscription area has a huge archive of our radio programs and my meditations and so forth and so on. And plus, we often have group Zoom meetings, and we have group chat room chats every Wednesday night. And so it's basically a social place for people who are interested in these things. And as I say, we're careful to not let the trolls invade us.
Thank goodness for that. No trolls.
I want to leave you with one thought, and this is something that Annie said that is my life aim. I will not reach it in this life. I know that, but what a fabulous aim it is. She said this: enlightenment is what happens when there is nothing left of us but love. And that is, you think about that and you think, my goodness, I have a ways to go, but it's not impossible to take the journey. Taking the journey is the thing.
Well, Whitley, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Afterlife-Revolution. The Afterlife-Revolution is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. If you'd like to connect with Whitley, please visit his website, unknowncountry.com, for more information. So is it possible to achieve balance and connection to spirit by tapping into the sacred power of dance? You'll want to stay tuned for our next special guest, Dr. Carla Walter, who's here to share with us her new book, Sacred Dance Meditation, 365 globally inspired movement practices enhancing awakening, clarity, and connection. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Dr. Carla Walter, who's here to share with us her new book, Sacred Dance Meditations, 365 globally inspired movement practices enhancing awakening, clarity, and connection. Have you ever considered the possibility to achieve balance and connection to spirit by tapping into the sacred power of dance? Through human history, people all over the world have recognized dance as an age-old yet timeless connection to the divine. Dr. Carla Walter writes about dance, spirituality, well-being, and has a PhD in dance history and theory. She is also the founder and CEO of Dance in the Spirit, LLC, a company that provides workshops, retreats, and classes on sacred dance meditation at locations around the world. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Carla Walter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I've got to ask, what inspired you to write this book?
Honestly, I have been a meditator for a very long time in my life. And I found myself actually feeling a need to be more physically active during meditation. And I would get that out-of-body experience when I danced. And so I began linking those two aspects of my life together and said, I'm benefiting from this, so I'm thinking other people might be interested in it as well. It's been a very, very inspiring practice for me. So as I was writing the book, I thought, wow, there is a vast world of dance, especially sacred dance, and it spans several, eons, really. And so as I was doing my own practice and bringing those things together, I just began writing it down. And so after, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, we actually do have a book now.
The books are such a journey. And my goodness, this one is quite a great book. And I loved how you brought in sacred dance. And for our listeners that are new to sacred dance, why don't you share a little bit about what that is?
Okay, sure. Thanks. So sacred dance is what people did before we were kind of hindered in expressing ourselves through the art of spiritual dance. It is really connecting with spirit and the cosmos to realign and reignite the soul and the spirit and the community with the sacred aspect of our lives. And this has been a practice that we see from all cultures. I mean, really beginning with the folks in Africa and moving all the way down through Australia and back again through the Mesoamerican area, and then over to the Asian continent, back through Russia, back around through China. And, it just circles the entire planet. A nonverbal way to reconnect and to connect with people from the past, spirits in the present, acknowledging what you might want to do in the future, and bringing that down to a bodily level. I probably could talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we're learning how sacred dance connects with neurofunction, but let me just say in brief that what the experts are finding, scientists are finding, that this aspect of our human existence really just involves all of our neurons, all of our nervous system, all of our emotions, and can provide a way for us to really be human and exercise our divine right to take care of ourselves and each other. So it's a vast topic, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to explore it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because while a lot of people may know a little bit about sacred dance, I don't think they really realize the science that's behind it as well. And so that's very exciting.
Yes, there's a vast array of science. There are studies that talk about how people benefit psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually from, even if, people say, oh, I just have two left feet. There's no way I can dance, or I'm embarrassed, or, I can't, my back is bad, or my knees, or what have you. The science basically tells us that those folks who merely watch sacred dance can benefit from the healing aspects of it, the uplifting aspects of it. And, we can see this, right? If we watch a wonderful dance performance, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, quote, in the genre, if you will, of sacred. But of course, I think all dance is sacred. Any dance that takes you into that out of body or that awe-inspired moment, whether you're watching or doing. But those are neurological aspects that are working on us as human beings. So it is a very scientific approach. And when you look at the other studies, when you're thinking about, for example, healing, or you're talking about acupuncture, acupressure, or if you're talking about you're talking about osteopathic medicine, there are these different meridians and so forth that run through your body. And these are all accessible through the sacred dance practice.
That's so exciting to hear about all that. And it seems that, how sacred dance is making a comeback, and people are learning a little bit more about it at this time. It's really kind of this ancient knowledge in many ways that we've forgotten.
It is true. And it lives in us. It lives in our cultures. It lives in our bodies. It lives in our communities. And you'll see, for example, if you just take Hawaiian dance, if you remove the popular aspect of Hawaiian dance and you really get down and evaluate what Hawaiian dance does, it actually tells stories. It actually reminds people of their connection to their ancestors. And the reason I love the Hawaiian dance culture is that it has a very strong masculine approach. Because lots of times we think about sacred dance or dance as just being very feminine, which in our society right now it is. But with the Hawaiian dance, you can see that the male culture, the male gender had a very strong influence in it. And so now with the resurgence There's a whole cultural push to recreate these dances, to document the dances, to share them, to ensure that the children are learning them and that they're not kind of put off to the side as unimportant in today's culture. And this is happening in many places. In India, of course, we know that Indian dance is a very strong meditative practice. You see this also in the Aboriginal cultures in Australia and Canada. And, when you're thinking about it in other frames, you can think about the Japanese dances where you have these epiphany type experiences. And so there's a whole academic field as well as the scientific field of bringing this, these forgotten or set aside ways of being and ways of knowing in each of these cultures. And it is fascinating.
Yeah, you think of Native American, and there's so many cultures that have dance incorporated in the work, in their spiritual process and just their everyday lives. And it has me wondering, when we look at that, are you asking people to incorporate dance in their everyday lives as well?
Absolutely, I am. The Sacred Dance Meditations Daily Reader has within it, it begins with explaining what the culture is that month is accessing. For example, if it's Mesoamerican culture, let's say it was, the Olmecs. Excuse me, that's not correct. Let's say it was African. We're talking about the Olmecs, and then the entries have the explanation of a particular dance and a particular sacredness to the dance. And then as the people who are reading and working with the dance meditation practice daily leave, the entry gives them something to use as they go through their day. So, for example, maybe a dance has a process where you make circles with your hands, like if your wrists are rotating around or your ankles are making rotations. The entry gives you a way to, when you're making a circle with your hands through the day, or if you're turning the ignition in your vehicle, to think about the sacredness of your movement. And the idea is to keep people within their bodies and keep them focused on the sacred aspects or the spiritual aspects or higher self aspects, whatever is appropriate for the individual throughout their day. So yes, it is a very accessible, and the idea is to bring it into not just a moment in the morning or a moment during the day when you're doing it, but to incorporate it into your daily life.
I love chapter 2 where you talk about getting grounded. And I think that that's so important because especially the world we live in, most of us are walking around not grounded, and how important it is to incorporate grounding in our dance as well.
Yes, very true. And so part of the reason for this is, one of the Zen practitioners that I admire, Suzuki Roshi, he talks about, well, what do you trust? He says, I trust my feet. Where are your feet? They're in the moment. They're right here today. And being grounded helps us to be stable rather than, where the mind lots of times wants to go into the past or the future. We rarely, I shouldn't say we, I'll speak for myself. Many times it's not in the present moment that we want to be. So being grounded really helps us. And we can take this groundingness from our friends in Africa and Egypt to help us understand the importance of it. And, in Western culture nowadays, a lot of our guidance or direction expresses, imagining locations sort of in the heavens, if you will. And some cultures don't necessarily imagine that heaven is in the heavens, but they imagine that heaven is in the ground. So that whole getting grounding piece is a really important aspect of learning about a different way of being and using that aspect to help with someone's practice.
I love how it also shifts perspectives too, because you talk about, how we're, usually it's not the heaven, but, really grounding in the heaven, that's the earth. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I think it helps people to be so much more present in their current lives if we look at it that way.
Yes, it is true. Because when you're here in the present moment, you're able to actually make an influence, right? So, actual spiritual and sacred development is an interaction that we have right here in the present moment with every human being. And if you're not grounded, then you're not able to actually be there for others or for yourself, really. So here on one of the in February 25th on page 70, the meditation and practice says, "As above, so below," as the saying goes. And this is this particular entry is thinking about our human life as a tree and how sacred trees are actually sort of reminiscent of the human body, if you will. And a tree is a wonderful image for spiritual growth and practice because it keeps us grounded while we are in flight. Because the tree itself is actually reaching to the heavens with its sort of leaves, if you will. And it's in the earth because it has roots that go deep into the soil where it gets its nutrients. So having both the ability to be grounded while you're also doing this high level spiritual work is the image that we're talking about when we're saying you need to remain grounded. Because, even if you are the most lofty spiritual guru, the help that you give people has to be in the here and now. And that's just, at least that's my perspective, humble as it may be.
Well, I like that perspective. I agree with it because, the here and now is what counts, right? Well, and so this has me kind of going to our next topic, because you've got all these great chapters that cover all this stuff. And one made me pause a little bit, and it was making laughter spiritual. And I love this. I love this. Why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about this?
Okay. Well, first, I would like to say that, being spiritual doesn't mean being serious and smug all the time. And, I found myself, I don't know if this is just me, but I found myself having kind of that perspective. It's like, I have to be serious. I have to be this example of perfection. And you know what? I don't. And I actually really believe that, the spiritual beings that guide us, they have these senses of humor. And to look at it from a more light perspective can be very helpful. So, and I picked the Iberian dance tradition as a place to, anchor this kind of a practice because their sacred dances were all about, happiness and joy. And there wasn't any, self-degradation or putting people in a negative light. And they just really had a light way of being. So when you're talking about laughing, you really see that as a therapeutic aspect. The science again tells us that if you just smile, even if you're not really smiling at anything, just the actual act of smiling produces biochemical reactions in the body. So if you're always frowning, you have a different set of chemical reactions. So this aspect of thinking about, okay, I can be happy. Happiness is a choice, and using laughter to help me do that is a way that I can just access this. So I give ideas about having a laughter practice where, maybe you watch movies, maybe you learn really good, clean jokes to tell people. You have laughter therapy in a sense. So, and you connect this with your daily dance, your daily sacred dance. And when you're going about your day, you try to get other people to smile and laugh, and you'd be surprised. For me, I found that, the switch from a down thinking pattern to an up thinking pattern to a happy pattern is a way of living that you can actually learn, do, and change your way of being. So this is a great chapter for me too. I love the clothing. I love everything about what the Iberians have given us to help us.
Well, I definitely love the laughter part because I think sometimes people do take their spirituality way too seriously, and so it's nice, especially in today's age, to add some levity, to our lives, and having this incorporated as part of our spirituality, I think is just so empowering.
Well, thank you. And true that the other piece of this is the whole idea of play, right? Playing. When do we play? No, we go to work, we come home, we do what we have to do, we go to bed, we get up and do it again the next day. And this notion of playing and having fun, for some folks who are very sacred, and they really feel that religion, plays a big part in their lives, which is perfectly fine. But the idea of playing, when you think about it, they talk about rest, relaxation, and recreation. And play brings all three of those things together. And there are all these studies, again, scientific studies about adults who need to play, they need to go out and have fun. And so when I'm here, I've got this Healing Through Spiritual Play on May the 27th. We can't go back in time and talk to the indigenous Iberians. We can only see that what they left us through sacred dance, their stories, their relationships with the goddesses and gods. Their practices reveal that sacred dance plus sacred play equals spiritual enlightenment. Play embraced as a spiritual practice enables us to reclaim our bodies as temples of the spirit and develop a sense of abundant creativity, to reclaim the spiritual gifts of hearing a waterfall, feeling the air in our nostrils, or disappearing into games for intervals at a time. So, it doesn't have to be a particular type of a spiritual game or a spiritual playtime, but just something that allows you to have some fun. I don't mean go out and play with buying a lot of stuff. I mean going out really playing and having some fun. So if anything, play, laughter, and creativity, it allows us to access our sacredness. It allows us to connect those parts of our being that sometimes get ignored. And it also gives us the ability to use those platforms, if you will, to springboard us forward into setting new goals, setting new directions, and of course, most important, helping others to achieve their awareness of their actuality in this life.
Oh my goodness, how empowering is that? You look at all that. Well, and it's great because you hear people all the time say, you know what, I've tried mindfulness. I can't do it. I fidget too much. Do you feel like this practice is like perfect for those people?
This is a perfect practice for those people. There are so many people who feel bad, right? They feel like, oh my gosh, I should be able to sit here for 45 minutes without moving, or I should be able to turn off my brain. I feel like that's something that's a negative judgment, and it's hard for me sometimes to let it be okay that I can't do certain things, right? So sacred dance meditation allows people who don't like to, or who are unable to, or unwilling, or can't, or whatever, sit still, or even do yoga poses for periods of time. It allows the energy in the space to propel. They're not hard dance movements. People they're daily moves like walking, standing, turning. And the whole idea is not to be a professional dancer. The whole idea is to dance and move as if you were a child, and you're not sort of encumbered by what other people think. And by connecting that movement with a sacred dance, with a spiritual, guidance, or like with play or with other types of things we're talking about in this book, people can lighten up and not ever feel like they can't do it or that they're not making the mark. So.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I can't even express how many times when I first started meditating, I'd sit down and I'm not even there for like 5 seconds. I'm like, am I meditating? Is this it? Oh, shoot, I'm thinking. Gosh, and then you go through this whole thing.
Exactly. And that doesn't help spiritual development at all.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But, and it's so nice to be able to incorporate some play and some fun into this, because, my goodness, there are so many people looking for ways to, just be more expressive. And this is something that they can do at home. You talked about, there are like virtual things that are happening. So people can be pretty much engaged in many different ways, right?
That's correct. Yes. You can, in this world where, especially now when we're, really in the throes of a revolutionary time with, our planet and the things that are happening, you really do need to have different access points, and, doing online sessions, signing up for, retreats that are happening online, taking sacred dance classes online, taking a writing workshop, taking, any kind of inspirational direction is really important, because we all need that feeding, if you will, that lifeline to growing and being better human beings, or, getting out of a rut. I know for me, after a while of doing the same thing over and over again, I kind of get bored, and I feel like I'm just going through the motions, and I wonder why, I start to feel a little heavy, a little down. And I'm thinking, well, what is this? Where's this feeling coming from? And I realize that I need to refresh my practice. And that's why they call it practice, because you keep at it daily as you go through life. So yeah, taking up a hobby. Some people like to do work, puzzles. Some people like to go for walks in nature. Some people like to, do boating or whatever it may be, skiing, to just give you that out of body, that letting go, that feeling of humanness, the feeling that you're connected, the feeling that you're not alone. I think that's really important. That's one thing I bring out in the book, and that is that whole butterfly effect that, if I go over to the Pacific Ocean and put my toe in the water, at some point that ripple effect will wind up on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. And that everything that we do actually does have meaning, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else, even though you may not see it right at the exact moment that you take an action or have a thought. So,
yeah, it's all that unseen stuff that happens. And a lot about that is just having faith in how everything comes together, and knowing that what we do makes an impact, and mostly on our own lives, so
that's true.
That's true. Start somewhere. Oh, Carla, my goodness, we could talk all day. I really loved your book. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about sacred dance meditations and be part of your community?
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the book. People can always reach me through my website, which is www.sacreddancemeditations.com. Or if people would like, they may email me, carla@danceinthespirit.com. And I'm always available through my, of course, Facebook page, Dance in the Spirit. Or, if people want to, they can write to my publisher, which is North Atlantic Books, and they'll make sure that I receive whatever inquiries they're looking for. I'm just very available online and easy to find. So
And so is your book. Your book is really easy to find. So.
Good. That's nice. Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Carla, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
You are welcome, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Carla. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Sacred Dance Meditations. Sacred Dance Meditations is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and select indie retailers. And again, if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, you can get it on Kindle. If you'd like to connect with Dr. Carla Walter, you can at sacreddancemeditations.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.